Hi, Dale. How are you?
It's Saturday night.
Reunion tour.
Ready for the SNL skit, guys?
Yeah, that's tough.
I'd like to call the June 2nd school committee meeting and public forum to session. We're going to start off with policy review for the face coverings and then quickly get into the public forum. I'm going to start off with the chair for policy. We'll take it from here.
So, for those of you guys who don't know, the state updated its guidance on use of face masks in schools. The policy, or the new guidance, is that the policy continue forward, but we have some stuff in our policy that's out of line with that, specifically the outdoor component of it. So the changes that I've brought forward are intended to address those things, just to bring us in line with where the state is and quite frankly where the practice in the district is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this was included in the packet earlier today, but it basically removes the on school grounds as for a face covering being required, and then lower down in that policy it removes while outside, and then puts in language specific to unvaccinated individuals who are outside on school grounds are encouraged but not required to wear masks and maintain appropriate social distance. So that those things are in line with the current, and then we added just the references down below, or I added the references down below. We had a policy meeting last week. We weren't able to discuss this because we didn't have a quorum, so I'm bringing it forward. And we can go through the normal first read, second read process, but right now there's not much time left in school, and so it seems to make sense to just go ahead and make this change to bring us into line with the guidance.
So I'd like to get us to a discussion point. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the policy EBCFA face coverings as recommended by policy.
Well, it wasn't.
Oh,
yeah.
recommended by Jeff Cubic.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? No more roll call vote. Mute. Sustain? No?
I just have to abstain. I haven't had the opportunity to read it, Jeff.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but with the mask, it's difficult to hear you back here.
We're going to take care of that in the next piece here.
I just want to hear.
I hear you. The microphones unfortunately don't broadcast out there, so I'll try to face the audience if I can.
The motion
So-
passes?
Motion passes?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the second thing, this is our first in-person meeting. The policy that's in place for face coverings really is intended to do two things. First of all, to protect the kids who aren't able to get vaccines. And the second thing is that it's intended to help keep consistency throughout the year. And this is our first in-person meeting. As the audience just noted, it's difficult to hear and to be heard with masks on at a distance without amplification. So I have a motion here to temporarily suspend the face covering policy for this meeting with certain caveats. So I'll make a motion, as permitted in policy BGF, suspension of policies. I move that we temporarily suspend the requirement in policy EBCFA, face coverings, that a face covering that covers the nose and mouth be worn by all individuals in school buildings. The suspension of this requirement shall only apply to individuals who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19, defined as at least 2 weeks after receiving the second dose of Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, or 2 weeks after receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Unvaccinated or partially vaccinated individuals must continue wearing masks inside the school building in accordance with guidance from the federal and state public health authorities. Any individual who wishes to continue to wear a mask may do so. This temporary and limited suspension of policy EBCFA shall expire automatically at the adjournment of tonight's school committee public forum without the requirement for an additional vote.
I'd like to add or amend to also include anyone who's had COVID within the last 90 days to also be able to not wear a mask as well.
Okay?
Do we need a vote on the amendment and then no to the new motion?
Yeah, I think we do, right?
Well,
Well, actually,
the
no,
motion
we
hasn't
didn't.
been seconded.
That's right,
yet, so-
okay, good.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Good to hear.
Okay. We're going to start the public forum. I know there's probably some folks that have never been to a public forum or don't know the protocols for the school committee meetings, so I'm just going to run by real quick on those. So basically, when we get to the point of community questions, comments, suggestions, and they want to speak to the committee, you want to come up and speak on this microphone. The microphone is for people at home. It's not for everyone in here. They won't hear it on the TV at home if you're not speaking in that microphone. We're not passing the microphone around. It will be there. You'd have to come up and speak there, just so less hands on it and all that. When you want to speak, if you raise your hand, I will see you, and I will call you up, and you can state your name and what street, don't need the number, so we know you're one of our residents. School communities, Dunstable, Groton. So we're going to start off with a very brief presentation for DEI, and then we'll go into the public forum section. We'll have an hour of that. If we conclude that within an hour, then we will start the next. We'll have another brief with the middle school survey, and again, the same scenario. I will remind everyone that if I do not see your hand, be patient. There's a lot of people in here. I will get to you. If you speak over someone, that's not going to be tolerated. There's too many people here. We want to have a respectful discussion. So we'll start with this and let's get rolling.
Yep. So it's going to be very brief. Kristen, if you could go to the next slide, please. Primarily, the emphasis that we want to make here is that it's the primary responsibility of the Groton-Dunstable Regional School District to meet the needs of a diverse group of learners in service of equitable outcomes for each of these learners in an inclusive environment. In order to live up to this responsibility, we have sought and received approval for the creation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator and renaming what was normally called our Pupils Personnel Services Department to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department. It is the mission of this department to support the needs of all the students at Groton Dunstable. Next slide, please. In order to frame that work, in the district, led by the DEI department and coordinated by the DEI coordinator, the district has developed 7 essential questions to provide the foundation for this work. This presentation has been sent out last Friday and also yesterday morning. So I'm going to go through just the highlights of the presentation and go over the 7 essential questions. The first essential question is, how are students provided with fair opportunities to reach their potential, and what changes should the district consider to provide greater equity? And again, this is for all students. On to the question number 2. How does the district's curriculum embrace diversity, ensuring that a broad range of voices and perspectives are represented, and what changes should the district consider to align the principles of DEI? Essential question number 3. How does the curriculum of the district support students growing in terms of their understanding of identity, implicit bias, cultural proficiency, and systemic racism? I'd like to call to our attention on this slide that this will be developed as part of the 5-year plan, that any adoption and implementation of curriculum to provide students with learning regarding identity, implicit bias, cultural proficiency, and systemic racism will follow the contractual requirements for the adoption of new curricula and the school committee's policy for the adoption of new curricula. There has been no new curricula developed. Next slide, please. Essential question number 4. How is our workforce representative of the community? What changes can the district work towards to make a more representative workforce? How does the district provide professional development for its staff in order to develop the tools and knowledge to be culturally responsive to the GDRSD community? Essential question number 5. How does the district work to promote a sense of belonging and acceptance within the district for our staff, our students, and our families? What ways can we use tools and resources available to improve a sense of belonging and acceptance? Essential question number 6. How are the resources of the district allocated in a manner that reflects the district's continued work of the implementation of the principles of DEI? And finally, essential question number 7. How does the evaluation process of teachers, staff, and administrators reflect the district's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Way forward. We have changed the name of the Pupil Personnel Services Department and the director to clearly illustrate the commitment and focus of this department. This department addresses the needs of all of our students as the district point team for special education students, students with 504 plans, students with social emotional needs, LGBTQ students, students for whom English is not their first language, and also deals with issues of harassment and bullying. We will reorganize the Pupil Services Department to allow for clarity for the staff and the community regarding whose responsibilities lie where, and the creation of a coordinator of district equity and inclusion position to lead this important work.
Okay. At this point, we'll open up the microphone to any questions, comments from the community for the committee, and you can address the chair when asking the questions, if there are any. Sure, come on over.
Hi, my name is Sue Prescott, 10 Dogwood Lane, Dunstable. I'm really happy to see this. I have 2 comments I'd like the committee to think about and consider as they go through those essential questions and pull up the data and come up with their plan. One is diversity. There have been anti-bullying campaigns going on for years, and I think the district is really good at helping the kids know what is bullying, and which kids are going through a mean phase in their life. I think the district can handle that. I think most kids kind of know in their gut when that's happening. The gap that I've seen. One of my kids has already been all through the school system. He's in college, and my daughter's now in high school. One of the gaps I've seen is how the kid should respond who isn't the bully, and who isn't the victim. So if someone's being picked on and 3 kids see it, they're usually just so shocked, they stand there, they don't know what to do, and maybe later they think about what they should have done. But to give them the tools or the words, the phrasing, to walk up to the victim, not the bully, because you know what? You really need to help the kid who's getting picked on and help that kid feel like they belong and feel like someone cares. Because I think that's the missing piece that I've noticed over the years that my kids have gone through Swallow Union and the middle school and the high school. So that's the missing piece I would like to see in the plan. And my second comment is on equity. So it seems to me that the district does a good job with special ed kids' needs, IEP kids, so the kids who have those plans so they can move along and they can fulfill their academic potential. And I think that's fabulous. But the equity piece that I see is missing are the kids who would be considered, either talented kids or advanced kids, that the equality is there, that maybe all 3rd graders need to know 8 times 7. So it doesn't matter what your level is. If you're equal, you all know 8 times 7, then you go to the 4th grade. But the equity part is the kids who are a little bit smarter than average, they don't have the equity to the resources for them to meet their full academic potential if they're bored in 3rd grade, and they're bored in 4th grade, and then they're bored in 5th grade. And then maybe in 8th grade, they get into the advanced math class, which is fabulous. That's one advanced class. And then honors programs at the high school, some are challenging, some aren't. So then they have to wait for the AP classes. So if you're smarter than the average, I have been seeing, I don't see the equity in helping those kids reach their full academic potential when they have to wait to be challenged over the years until they get into 8th grade math with Mr. Sweeney or the AP classes in 11th and 12th. And there's also the Middlesex, but that's the end of high school. And I'd like to thank you for your work. I think it's a fabulous program. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Gene Gutherson, 196 Stephan Drive, Groton. So look at this, and I said, well, it's really hard to question the objectives. Very laudable. I don't know if there's any problem with it, but I'm sort of a fundamental person, and I wonder what is the root cause, or what problem are we trying to solve? Are we saying that prior to this inclusion or this creation of these roles and renaming, that we didn't have, the school district was not adequately addressing the objectives of what you put up here? I mean, as so eloquently stated, there's been anti-bullying campaigns since I've been in this district, which is about 5 years now. Doesn't seem to be a very good job at inclusion. It seems to be the topic of the day. So I'm just wondering what started this? Is this a state mandate? Did some event at school cause us to say, hey, we've got to reevaluate our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion? So what's the foundation? That's my question.
I'll touch upon it. So there's been a number of different things over the course of years that I've been on the school committee. I've been on, this will be my 6th year. There's been certainly reports of bullying that have changed the structure of bullying as I knew it as a kid. So meaning bullying in regards that includes race, religion, and just even around town. You can kind of see, you live in Groton, so clearly you've known about the spray painting that happens throughout over town. And then you have the national level of the hyper-focus to a certain extent that also does bring into some different behaviors and things like that to the kids. The kids are very aware of what's going on out in the world as well. So, have we had an adequate anti-bullying campaign? We can't control every child, right? It's impossible. I think that to think that anything is adequate is a disservice to our district and a disservice to our students. I think that if you think that we cannot improve, all you would have to do is ask any one of the parents in this room, and I can guarantee you their kid has either witnessed a bullying scenario or been bullied themselves. It does happen, and I don't think that there's anyone on this board that would even claim that it doesn't. But I think that we're obligated to do better, and I think that we had a group come to our board a couple weeks ago. Actually, it seems like a couple months ago, and they shared actual stories that took place in our district. And I'm not sure if you were listening to that particular meeting in January, but it also was on the Groton channel. Some of the stories in regards to what's happening or has happened in the past, is unacceptable. So I think that our board has made the decision to do better. And we're starting with this advisory group who will look at different things in regards to our goals and come with recommendations. What will come of the recommendations, I guess we'll soon, there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of work there. And as far as mandates, we're already starting to see different legislature begin to support the work here. And we're not the only district that actually is. We've never been a reactionary district, and we've always done well by being proactive. And that's this approach that you're seeing here. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Janice White, Wintergreen Lane. I love this, and I've had a child who was bullied severely in another school district, and that's why we moved to Groton, one of the main reasons we moved here. And I love this. My concern is that I'm not seeing this fit into what Martin Luther King's vision was. I don't see what we're doing here as looking at the content of someone's character as opposed to the color of their skin. What I'm hearing is that we're separating people into all these groups, and we're addressing each group, the LGBTQ group, and the Black Lives Matter group, and the Asian hate group. And I think we would be much better served if we developed some type of program that taught our children about abuse of power across the spectrum. #MeToo, that's abuse of power. Domestic violence is abuse of power. Slavery is abuse of power. Systemic racism, police misconduct, it's all abuse of power. And I think our children would really, really be well served if in evaluating all this, we could come up with some way to develop into our school system, teaching our children that all of that is the person who has the power, is the one who's oppressing, who's abusing, and it's not just a US thing or our district thing. That's gone on for centuries, and I've been looking at my children's world history stuff recently. And, the Europeans and the Asians and everyone, whoever had the power has always abused. And you can see that even in our Congress, whichever branch gets in, whichever party is in, what happens and what they do. But I think our children would be really well served if we could take this information that we find and find some way to build a curriculum in for our kids to learn. This behavior is bad, whether it's in kindergarten and it's abuse from one child to another, whether it's picking on someone because you have problems at home and it's rolling downhill, whether it's in the workplace. I was bullied as a child, and I had a sexual harassment lawsuit in a job, and I know it's all power, and I think our children would do really well if we could figure out a way to teach them about that moving forward, instead of saying, look at this person because of their skin color and they were oppressed, or this person because of their religion, or this person because someone said something, this disease came from a certain place and they got abused. I think it all falls under the same blanket, and you can do a really great job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
this up?
Yep. Just make sure you bring it back down for the short folks.
Oh, there might be taller people that follow me. Hi, my name's Kent Blossel. I've reached out to some of the board in the last couple of weeks. I've also put a couple of comments out on the Dunstable Facebook site. I want to thank the board for allowing this in-person meeting to happen. Zoom's been great for all of us the last 15 months, but it's not the same as this. And I wish we had a bigger room where everyone could sit and actually participate. I have a daughter who graduated here, 3 children going to high school here next year. We moved here specifically for this school system. We love the teachers here. We're grateful for the community that we live in, and we want to be part of the continuing go-forward strategy to make things better. I would say probably everyone in this room isn't going to dispute the fact that we shouldn't have harassment, that we shouldn't have bullying. Sadly, we've been seeing a lot of that by the parents and adults and even family members of the committee who've been bullying and harassing online. That's got to stop. It's not appropriate. And I'm not going to get in and single people out. I'm not going to get out and give quotes. But all harassment, I love the standards that we have in Groton Dunstable. Love it. Diversity of thought means we respect thoughts from both sides. And another form of bullying would be if decisions get made and without parent input, without parents being able to get in and discuss these issues in a timely manner. 2 hours isn't going to solve this problem. I do have a question at the end regarding what the curriculum is at all. But I would dare say that I know that my kids have come back, especially during this heated debate over politics over the last year, feeling bullied by people's opinions about who they voted for, who they're not. This is happening from the kids level. It's happening from the adults level. All you have to do is get on Facebook and see how disgusting adults are behaving and talking to each other. And like I say, some members of the families of this committee have participated in that. It's inappropriate. And if you want to lead in that, you've got to lead by example. Second of all, as far as the content is concerned here, who's coming up with the content? Everyone wants this community to be a loving, inclusive environment. Every one of us wants to be able to have a better community. And it's great to see so many parents who have come out here for that today. That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is what's being taught, how it's being taught, when it's being taught, what's being practiced. I studied myself. Again, I grew up in San Francisco during the 60s and 70s. I saw a lot of these issues going on back then. A lot of fights in high school, a lot of bad blood, and a lot of good work done to make America better. I personally, like the woman who preceded me, am a MLK and Gandhi disciple. But even on these issues, people of diversity didn't all agree. Malcolm X was very critical of MLK, didn't like his "I have a dream" speech. And so I think that's what the people in the community are saying is, hey, we want all of this stuff. But if this is going to be content from a particular group that has a particular point of view, and it's going to be rammed down people's throats, that can't happen. And if there's going to be diversity of thought, anything that's going to be taught on the subject, students should debate these things. There should be people to say, okay, we all agree with these principles and values. Okay, but how do we get there? And are we going to respect people's different opinions on, wait, maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe it's not appropriate. I totally agree. To quote Martin Luther, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I believe in these principles, 100%. And dividing people into different groups and telling one group is better than the other, or any of that other stuff, is not going to produce that kind of result. But teaching love, inclusion, teaching good behavior, patience and mutual respect for diversity, those things will. But we have to be able to have a forum if this is going to be taught, where diverse thoughts will come in and talk about how best to get there. That's my opinion. The question is, where's this curriculum coming from? What's the contractual obligation you folks are talking about?
So before the curriculum, so first of all, thank you, sir. And Dr. Chesson was going to answer the curriculum question. I just wanted to share some information with you. The work here that you've seen with a summary, a very high-level summary, this work amongst our school committee has been going on for months, at least months, and we've had a number of different public meetings, Zoom, due to the pandemic, in which we've had hundreds of people attend. And at one point, I think we had 400 people attending a meeting, which is fantastic to kind of see.
It is, and I confess, I've been absent.
Yeah, no.
That's on me.
Yeah, I just want to share, so I agree with you 100%. If you're going to make decisions as a governing body, you should include the public. I just wanted to share with you that we have done that. This is not a unilateral decision. The makeup of our advisory group that will lead this work is a very diverse group in which we try to gather as many different opinions to try and come to the table. And it doesn't stop there. Our ideal of this advisory group is they also can spider out and have their meetings, just like we have our meetings, in which then they can actually go out and bring in as many people as they want, as many resources as they want to achieve our goals that we have for this group. So you're 100% right. You have to include the public. And that is exactly what we have been doing over the last several months. So we hear you. We hear you.
Yeah, and that's great. Listen, I understand outside of arithmetic and other things that are not subject to personal opinion, people are going to have different opinions on these things. And like I just said, MLK and Malcolm X had different opinions about how to solve civil rights issues. I think there's probably a lot of folks in this room who might have different opinions about how to address that. But if anything reeks of shame or anything reeks of, I believe that people are punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgressions or my grandfather's transgressions or whatever. And that's my personal opinion. And I realize that parenting, most teaching comes from the parents in the home, right? So I would just ask that there be more transparency. I mean, I will refute things that are taught in school that I don't believe in. And I will respect anybody's right to vote for whoever they want and to get involved. And that's what I hope more and more happens here. As far as the content's concerned, so this was a group collection, or was this, here's a, boom, here's your DIA training, do you want to accept it or not?
No. Well, there's been numerous steps, first of all. Our board has gone through at least one session of training together to try and make sure that we collectively are on the same page in regards to our ideal of what this even would look like. You know, there's so many, and we have to do that in public sessions and things like that. So there's that. The advisory group, which took, and we were faulted for taking so long by many, because some thought we were dragging our feet. But what we were doing is trying to be meaningful and thoughtful of how to go about establishing an advisory group that's not going to be temporary, that's going to be basically an annual renewal, so that way it actually can have systemic changes in our district that are long-lasting, long after we're gone.
Sure, and it's listen, we're not going to solve this problem overnight.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
But I applaud you for wanting to address this subject. It needs more attention, and it needs the community to get in and buy in. If people aren't bought into the principles, it's going to turn into a sad political thing like it is outside of these classrooms. So we love the teachers here. I'm grateful for the work you're doing. I didn't want to run for your job because I know how much work it takes and I couldn't handle it. But I think transparency, if you could walk away by saying, this isn't going to be solved overnight. There should be more of these meetings, more transparency, more power to the parents. That's what I would be in favor for. So, thank you.
I'm going to have Dr. Chesson answer your
If I
question.
can just answer your question regarding contractual. So it's actually in the teacher's contract about the adoption of new curriculum. There's a very specific process that has to happen. We have to form a committee of teachers to look at various curricula. They have to match the same frameworks. in that subject area, and there was actually state frameworks regarding these issues and this content. Then we have to have it a couple of different programs piloted by teachers. We have to have a rubric that evaluates which of the best curricula best meet our needs. That information has to go to the curriculum and assessment subcommittee of the school committee, and they make a recommendation to the school committee as a whole. So that is actually spelled out in the teacher's contract. So where you're talking about it being transparent, that's exactly what I'm trying to say here, that we cannot adopt a new curriculum without going through that process. And I wanted to make sure that the community was clear on that.
Thank you. One final comment.
If only if no one else, because we have 30
Yes,
minutes
thank
for
you.
this.
I realize that.
And I have some hands up.
3 more seconds. Sure, thanks. So, my grandfather came over before World War I, escaped the horrors of Europe. My wife is Polish. She lived in Poland during the 70s and 80s. Both of our families know a lot about what bullying is at an institutional level. Both of us are very proud of our backgrounds, our cultures. Love European culture, love the food, love it, but I also love Latin culture, Asian culture. I lived in Asia for 2 years. This isn't about one culture over the other. It's about respecting all cultures. And again, we'll go back and say, I don't want my kids ever feeling ashamed because they're white, because they're of European descent. I don't want them being ashamed of their founding fathers. And that is something we won't subscribe to. We want there to be principles of love, inclusion, all these kind of things, as long as it doesn't single out any race and make any race feel ashamed or any religion feel ashamed for the having values that they have. Thank you.
Yep. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. One quick question. Bottom line up front, is it your intention to teach critical race theory in this district?
Are you asking me, sir?
No, it's our intention to basically teach the curriculum that we have, first of all, and review what we have. But when I hear critical race theory, what I hear is culturally responsive teaching. So, which is what we're not talking about the same thing. So, I guess in the short answer, you answer yes or no? No.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, because you say you are proactive in your approaches, but a lot of these things that I see seem to be very reactionary in nature to what's going on in the worldly news. And I know there's a lot of debate regarding critical race theory, that it's parental responsibilities. And similar to the second subject we're going to get into this night, I want to know if the school is going to be taking on these additional roles. That's all.
So we're going to continue the same role that we have always done, which includes exactly these topics. The
So
different.
you are not planning on teaching critical race theory, is that correct?
That's
what she
correct.
said.
That's what I said, yes. Sure, come on up. And then,
Hello, James Moore, Reedy Meadow Road in Groton. I've listened to a lot of the folks who have been coming up and speaking, and I respect what most of them said. We are talking about oppression, as one person put it. We are talking about reaching out to everyone and sharing love and trying to fight things with love. It is important that everybody has a voice. But it's also important to remember that for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, people didn't have a voice. And if you're asking me, as a 56-year-old black man, to say, I trust you white people, that you're going to have my back because you always have had my back, are you really asking me to do that? How can I trust that? 56 years old. I was born and moved to a white neighborhood before Martin Luther King died. I've seen it. So white folks have given us reason to think this. I will also say, in my 56 years, I've met thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of good people, of good white people. I just think that black people, that people of color, want to make sure that our story is being told. And too often our story hasn't. And I would agree that at this moment, this is, as somebody said, I think, the flavor of the day. But perhaps that's because for years and years and years, it wasn't. And we need to make sure that every American's voice is being heard. And that has not been the case. That's why I think it's important. And I think all of us know of times where it wasn't the case. I will also agree that more than important, maybe more than anything else, is that people need to reach across the aisle and speak to each other. I know there's plenty of people here who would disagree with me about what I have to say, about what should be taught in schools. And I'm also a teacher out of district. But I can't think of anything more important than to keep the dialogue going and making sure everybody's listening to each other and making sure that you, folks, remember that you are here for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nellie Gutrimson, 196 Pond. So I agree with what Ken said. Nobody's born a racist. We are taught to be racist. So if there's going to be a curriculum, I want to know if parents will have access to this plan so that we as parents can educate ourselves what you're teaching our kids in class. Because my daughter has been coming home with words that I have never heard. And there's no way for me to correct her if I don't know what the words mean. So I want to know if that curriculum is going to be passed on to us as parents so that we can educate ourselves as well. That's all I want to know.
So for the process, for the curriculum, any new curriculum that comes into play, there's actually meetings that discuss those. We have, it eventually will come to the CIAA subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the school committee, which is posted meetings just like this. The community can attend all of our meetings. It will then come from the CIAA, in which they will visit it and review it and see the recommendations. Generally several weeks of the process, and then it comes to the school committee, in which we will also, because any new curriculum must be approved by the school committee. So you'll often see, especially as this work goes towards, and there's so much interest in it, that you'll see I will specifically point out an agenda, and I'll try and circulate it, and we'll make sure it gets emailed out to parents as well. And I try to, unfortunately, the only way to circulate it to the community at larger is basically like a social media sites. So it'll be there as well. So that way, if there's anyone of interest, whether you have kids in the district or not in the district, you'll be able to see what that discussion's happening are. So that way, if you want to cue in, you want to listen to it because you can't attend, or you want to attend and you want to ask some questions, the meetings are there. Everything that we do is done in public. We have to do it that way. So as far as new curriculum, it is approved by the school committee at a school board.
What I mean by curriculum is, do we as parents, can we have the classes as well?
Oh, have the classes.
Because,
okay.
For instance, in the past we have asked to have someone explain UDL to us, where we can actually go to a class, like a professional development class. Will there be something where parents can also attend it so we can see what our kids are being taught in class and what it means and how they're being taught this? Because parents still don't know what UDL is,
Yeah.
but it's still being used in our school.
So I personally think it's a great suggestion. You're seeing a bunch of people write it down because I'm guessing that they may think it's a good suggestion as well. So it'll be on an agenda in the future. And just so everyone knows, we end our school year close to when the kids end the school year, but we end up back in at the end of August. So we only have a couple meetings left this month, but everything gets picked right back up in the early fall. Just a time check for everyone. So it's 7:42. So we have another 15 or so minutes for any other questions or comments regarding this particular, there's a hand way in the back here.
Scott Whitefield, McCarthy Drive. I think, part of the concerns about the curriculum, quite frankly, like in a lot of cases, you read the news, any news, there's a lot of ideologies creeping their way into curriculums, and I think it's important just to align on the purpose of a curriculum. I know as a parent, I need my kids, I have 2 kids in Flowborough, to be focused on academic excellence and do so in an environment that treats everyone with dignity and respect and everything that we're talking about here. I do not believe it's the school's role to promote any ideology. And I think that's where the rub becomes, right? Mm-hmm. Because as ideologies from any perspective start to creep in, then you start to alienate people on the other side. And I think, when it comes to values and morals and belief systems and worldviews and ideologies, that's my job as a parent and not the district. And I just urge the committee, if they're here, and the school district to keep that in mind as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Scott. Did I see another hand as well? No? I'm going to wait another minute before I move on.
I just want to second
Yeah.
what he had to say.
Okay, it has been seconded.
Meaning more reaching out to each other, more crossing out, more discussion, more honest discussions, candid discussions. But done in the spirit of love and not shame.
If you bring yourself and all these friends every meeting, we will have it at a different location where everyone gets a seat. I promise you that. We appreciate the participation. We really do. Yes, come on up.
Hi, Rebecca Tabasky, Lowell Road in Groton. I'm new to town. This is my first meeting here, so I appreciate learning about this, understanding better how the school system is thinking about these issues. I didn't get to take in well enough all of the different points, but I'm wondering what you're thinking about as far as this curriculum, not only as a subset in its own, but how it cuts across all other areas of curricula, how the integration of issues around systemic oppression factor into understanding our history in America, in the world, in these questions about how systems work, change how we understand the world. And I think to Jane's point, where so many people and so many issues have not been addressed, have not been brought into the curricula, have not children have not been exposed to these issues. I think that's something to think about across all areas, not only thinking about a DEI set of issues, which I think is critical and important, and I think really important when thinking about that, to prioritize those most affected, those who have been historically marginalized, those who have not had the benefit of having their stories told and heard and taught within schools. So that's not to shame the stories that have been addressed, but to acknowledge, uphold, and celebrate those which haven't, and to confront some really dangerous and horrifying bits of our history within this country and within the world, the way power has played out, that are uncomfortable, and that people who are, white, cis, English-speaking men in this country, for example, as that's, the position of power, where that's hard to confront that. And I think that that's true of students, to have to look at all of these voices, to hear stories that they don't know, to confront ways that they may have learned within these systems of oppression what they know, where those values are. Because I think that is something that's embedded within curricula. It is something that's embedded within what people learn in schools, in addition to being at home. So my question is just, and it may have been addressed, and so I wonder at which point and how we're thinking about that as a community and as a school, to ensure that this is integrated into so many areas of what's desperately needed within the teaching.
So we are required, in line with the DESE policy, that we ensure individual teachers of the district review all educational materials for simplistic and demeaning generalizations lacking intellectual merit on the basis of race, color, sex, gender, identity, religion, national origin, and sexual orientation. Appropriate activities, discussions, or supplementary materials are to be used to provide balance and context for any such stereotypes in such materials. So that is our essential question, part of our essential question number 2. And we're going to be establishing a curriculum instruction and assessment review process to make sure that we are in line with that DESE policy. That's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we are required to do that. And every 6 years when we have a program review from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, actually they've changed the process now. I think it's every 2 years now, but it was every 6 years. Part of the seed power review. They're going to ask us to present our findings from that in order to be cleared from that review. So this is essential question number 2, I think, what you're talking about.
Is it possible to pull that up just so to
Yep.
be able to see how that maps? Thank you.
We can also email this out.
I sent this out twice, but I can
Okay.
send it out again if you need it. So it says, how does the district's curricula embrace diversity, ensuring that a broad range of voices and perspectives are represented? What changes should the district consider to align to the principles of DEI? And there are draft and continued education plans, because, as I said, we're being asked to do this all the time. In addition, the district all districts in Massachusetts will be implementing a civics curriculum for grades 8 at the middle school. And then all of this will be, this assessment will be reflected in our 5-year strategic plan. And that 5-year strategic plan always involves parents and community members, as well as the EDI advisory council that the school committee has set up. So if you have specific things after looking about this, specific questions, don't hesitate to contact me.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I think that these things factor into math curricula, right?
Yep.
And the stories that are told and the way
Yep.
in which that's taught. It
Absolutely.
factors into science and what topics are addressed and who's recognized as being path-breaking scientists.
Yep.
You know, these things are all it cuts
Absolutely.
across everything beyond just
Yeah.
civics.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Very good.
thank you.
Yep, come on up. We'll speak up louder. Yeah.
These
Sorry.
microphones are for the television cameras, they're not for you, unfortunately.
We'll yell at you.
We'll yell.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Nikki Rockwell. I'm Massapogway in Dunstable. I also taught at Swallow Union for 3 years and taught at the middle school for... Sorry. Maybe you've heard enough of me, I don't know. So I taught for 3 years at Swallow Union in special education, and then I went for 13 years at the middle school, and I'm sure many of you have seen the penning project that sits in the middle school by the PAC that was done by our classes. And I think that, you know, one of the things I want to be really careful of here is there's a lot that's good in our school system already. A lot of these systems have been there, and I've been retired 10 years, so were there at least when I left. So every time a new curriculum, you know, we were getting a new book. All the teachers that taught that level sat down with a grid that checked off how many women were in there, how many men were there, how many people of color were there. So it's not like this is a practice that is brand new, okay? This is something that really has been there for a while. It's just adding bits and pieces. And I just give you an example. I watched Channel 5 the other day, you know, Doug Meehan with his tan and his silver hair, and he made this comment about George Washington. And he said George Washington had wooden teeth. Well, most educated people know that those were the teeth of enslaved people from his plantation. And for a newscaster to perpetrate that myth is something that I think our teachers are struggling to learn. We weren't taught this in school. When I went to school, you know, anybody can become president. That was baloney. And it certainly was baloney for girls. So, and we all had to wear skirts to the middle of our knees and, you know, whatever. So things change in education. And I think that what I'm hearing here is that people don't really know what's going on in the schools right now. What the process is. What's the process of the school committee? How does it function? How does it make decisions? How does that interrelate with administration? How does that interrelate with state standards? And it is really, believe me, when you're a teacher, it's overwhelming to have to put a standard up every day on your board and show how you're teaching to that standard and, meet all of this criteria. So I think that people are, by pulling this out in this way, it's almost as if it's paying it a form of attention that seems like it's leaving certain people out or looking down on certain people. And I really think this is really quite the opposite. I think of the kids in 8th grade who like to go down to the separate classroom for the multiply handicapped during silent reading. And then they got involved with Special Olympics. And they actually started to build some bonds and some friendships outside of school. That's the kind of thing we're talking about, trying to build more of that into our system so that it isn't like when I started teaching, that kid's down in the basement and you never see him. I really think this is about respecting all the individuals in the school. I'm sorry that it reaches this level of sort of, when you say teachers have philosophy behind what they are teaching, I just think that's not correct. There are some good teachers and there's some teachers that need some work. And my feeling is, if you're at home or you're in your neighborhood, my neighbor came up to me and said, my kid wants to talk about why, in a paper, why you shouldn't get vaccinated. And his teacher laughed at him. Why didn't that parent go to the teacher? Why didn't they go to the school instead of, bitching to everybody in the neighborhood? It just isn't helpful. It builds this kind of, you know how it is. It just builds when people just bitch and they don't move forward. You're not changing anything. And the last thing I want to say is this is a two-way street. If you're going to get involved, don't do it behind people's backs. Get out front. Say what you believe. I don't care. Tell me you disagree with me. I'll tell you I disagree with you. That's what democracy's about. But when it's secret and behind, it's really hard to know what's true and what people believe. So I really commend you for having this meeting. Thank you very much for doing it. It's a brave act. It's brave for everybody to come here and speak. So thank you.
Thank you.
I thought someone was coming up. We've got 5 more minutes. Here we come from the back. Come on up.
Good evening. My
Evening.
name's Anita Moeller, and I'm a graduate of Groton Dunstable, class of '84.
Welcome back.
Yeah. I just don't have any children in the school system right now. My youngest graduated a few years ago, so I'm also a taxpayer that does not have the children in school right now. And I just want to say that I support your work of this committee. I appreciate this forum and the opportunity for people to speak. I will say I was pretty surprised at the Dunstable Town meeting when the work of this committee and a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion came up as a focus. And it just, I think, made clear to me the polarization that exists in our town is no different than the rest of our country. And why should we be different? But I think that also brings to attention that we need to not be afraid to talk about difference. The issues that came up at the Dunstable Town meeting focused primarily on race. Personally, I believe racism exists here, just as everywhere, and it's an issue to be discussed as a point of history and culture, and that's nothing to be afraid of. I also, though, was surprised that the other issues of DEI didn't come up in that discussion, such as if anybody has a daughter and is concerned about her inclusion in society, or someone with strong religious beliefs, or a child with disabilities, or sexual preference or difference. I feel like that's all a part of diversity, equity, inclusion, and should be talked about. That lives among our students, among our society, among our community, and should be part of our curriculum as well. So I just want to support you, support your work, and I appreciate what you said, Marlene, at the town meeting, that we need to prepare our students for a global world. And you talked about how Groton and Dunstable are 97% white. And that's true, and we do need to prepare our students for a global world. My son is now applying for a job in Lowell, and he's going to work in a very diverse environment should he get that job, and I think he should be prepared for that by work here. Folks said it should be taught at home. It was sort of yelled from the back of the room. And of course, people need to teach their children their beliefs at home. That's our job as parents. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't have a place in our public school system to talk about issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I just want to thank you for your work, support your work as a graduate, parent, and a taxpayer that doesn't have kids in the school right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have time for one more. Yes, go right ahead, Katie. She's the closer.
Hey, I'm actually not a school committee member. I'm a parent. I'm fortunate to get to sit in on these meetings because I'm involved with a group of parents who are special ed advocates. So I just want to very briefly put in one more voice that we have heard here tonight, but I don't think it's been the loudest voice, that we do not equally include and represent the experiences and stories of all of our citizens and all of the children in our schools. You cannot have watched the racial and social justice group's presentation without hearing that children and adults have been bullied, and it is about minority status. It's not just a blanket abuse of power. We can't just love it away. It is systematic, and we have given people in this town and in our schools reason not to trust people of power. We have given plenty of reasons. Incidents have happened. They cannot be ignored. So I just have to say, I know personally from having a kid who can sometimes be on the outskirts, this is not just a nice idea, and we know that it is necessary if we are to change, and we can do better. I love hearing Marlena say we have to do better. But if you did not see that presentation, and you think that with just teaching our kids love, and let's be sort of a colorblind approach where we just gloss over and let's teach good behavior, the real change isn't going to happen. It's not enough.
So with Katie finishing up, that is going to conclude that particular section for the DEI portion of the public forum. We're going to move on to the youth risk survey behavior. What's that? 2 minute break. Oh, after a 2-minute break? Thank you. Sure. Yeah, well, if you want to cue it up, so it's, I assume there's a, oh, she's got it?
Nothing to show.
start the next section, if everyone wants to have a seat or get situated, specifically out of the camera range.
My watch keeps telling me to breathe. It's annoying.
James. James.
I was gonna teach your voice.
Thank you. Cameraman, we won't want him upset. Okay, we're going to start the next section. There's not a visual presentation. Dr. Chesson is going to begin with some verbal information about the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey. Then we're going to open up to comments, questions, just like we did last time.
So we sent out the links for the Emerson Hospital Community Programs Youth Risk Behavior Survey last Friday and again on Tuesday. I just want to make sure that folks are aware that this is a national, regional, and local program. Most school districts work with a healthcare provider, and we have been working with in Acton, Boxborough, Carlisle, Concord, Carlisle High School, Groton, Dunstable, Harvard, Littleton, Maynard, and Neshoba Regional for at least 15 years with this healthcare provider. The findings are used to set school health and health promotion goals and support modifications of school health curricula and support Emerson Hospital's community health needs assessment. Each school district asks their students to fill out the questionnaire unless their parents withdraw them from the process. And also out on their website was the results from the 2020 survey and the 2021 survey. I want to call it to everybody's attention that one of the things about the 2021 survey was to try to assess what the impact of the pandemic would have on the types of behaviors that this survey looks at, particularly in many areas, but particularly around depression, self-harm, contacts with adults. And so that information is out there. Normally what happens in the spring is that we give a presentation to the school committee. We didn't in 2020 because the pandemic ensued and we were sent home. We will be presenting around the 2021 data when the school committee resumes in September. And we will also include the 2020 Youth Risk Behavior Survey data at that time. But that survey data and the work that we do with Emerson Hospital is available on that website and was sent out to all parents. There were some concerns, I just will tell you very quickly, there were some concerns regarding the timing of notification. We have heard those concerns and we will be letting all parents know 14 days before the survey. And it will come as an email, but it will also come as a newsletter from the school's principal, and it will also come on our district website. There was also a request to have separate links to opt out, as well as a separate link to request a copy of the questions, and that will also be in the communication that comes next year. So those were the feedback that we heard loud and clear. As a matter of fact, all of the feedback that we received from parents was shared with Emerson Hospital. The questions are very close to the CDC questions that are done at the national level, and we provided them with that feedback because they are the professionals that work with the CDC and other health organizations in order to design the survey.
So we'll open it up to questions, comments, just if you could raise your hand and then I'd let you come on up. And you don't have to do that, I'm just saying, I don't want everyone just running for the microphone.
Good evening, my name is Corey Brock, Old Dunstable Road, Groton. My wife and I and our 3 daughters live on Old Dunstable Road, as I said. I'm here to express my concerns and disappointment with the leadership throughout the school district and to share my story as it pertains to this survey. Some of you may already be aware of it, many of you not. So on the evening of March 18th, my wife and our 6th grade 12-year-old daughter were talking about her day at school. My daughter was acting a bit awkward, and she mentioned that she had taken a survey and in her own words said it was so inappropriate and made her feel very uncomfortable. Neither my wife or I ever received a notice from the school about this survey. Last year we did receive a notice. We had the ability to review the questions on the survey, and we opted out. My daughter told her teacher that she felt her parents wouldn't want her to take the survey. Her teacher told her she didn't need to answer the questions, just to read through, skip through to the end, and hit submit. 2 of those questions were, the last time you had sexual intercourse, what one method did you or your partner use to prevent pregnancy? Another question read, during the past 12 months, how many times have you had oral sex? My daughter is 12 years old. Those were just 2 of the 73 questions asked. Other questions asked about pornography, suicide, alcohol and drug use, sexual identity, and body image. After reading through the questions, it was clear that my family, and more specifically my daughter, had been violated. Just yesterday, Superintendent Chesson sent out an email with a link to information on the survey, which she just referenced. On page 3, there's a methodology of that survey that states questionnaires are age appropriate. At what point did I give up my parental right for someone else to decide that for me? The document also stated that the survey is guaranteed confidential, but not necessarily private. So which one is it? It can't be both. That's a question.
Sure. The survey information, just the results go to a third party who compiles the information, but it's not student specific. So it just looks at responses per grade.
Not sure I entirely understand that, but we'll move on.
Well,
We can explain it.
Yeah, let me
let's not
clarify.
move on.
So when someone hits submit, the data with a code and no student's name or email address is sent to a third party that does the analytics. The school district has no visibility to individual students' responses. No one else but a third party has visibility to individual students' responses, and those responses, as in all research projects, are coded. So there's a code that's associated that will say what grade and what school. That's it. It does not say who the student is. Is that more clear?
It's clear. I would still challenge it. It's through technology. Everything's traceable. It can't be guaranteed. I'll move on. At 11 and 12 years old, these topics are family discussions between parent and child, and only when the parent feels the time is right to have them. We have been robbed of our opportunity to initiate this conversation with our daughter, by you. I no longer have trust for the leadership in our district. Any person with an ounce of common sense would see that this survey was mishandled and totally inappropriate. Yet, despite all my efforts, there has been zero accountability. On April 15th, my wife and I had an in-person meeting with Superintendent Chesson. We outlined our concerns and the changes we felt were necessary going forward. Those requests were, and still are, that parents and guardians have 30 days prior notice on all future surveys, full transparency on the content of the survey, and lastly, that written consent is required for the students to participate. At this meeting, I presented a document showing 62 signatures from other individuals within the community that shared our concerns. These signatures were collected with very little effort and in a very short period of time. Superintendent Chesson was very dismissive to our concerns. She tried to justify the appropriateness of the survey, yet she stated that she had never actually read the survey herself. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Well, it is what you said, and there's people there to attest to that. 4 or 5 other people. Moving on. A good leader should listen to concerns, acknowledge failure, be accountable, and strive to make things better for the community they serve. There was none of that. On a recent evaluation by the school committee, Superintendent Chesson was rated on 4 categories: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. Her rating was listed as exemplary on all 4 items. I would like to ask the school committee or the chair, how is that rating possible when there is such poor judgment? Who is being held accountable?
Would you like me to answer that now?
I would, please.
And I will tell you that because there are an amount of people here, you're going to have to wrap up yours so what we can hear from many people, not just one.
I'll get through very quickly.
Yep.
Thank you.
She was exemplary, so in the process of an evaluation, it's very similar to teachers. They have to produce artifacts in regards to meeting specific criteria in regards to their job. And as far as the job that Dr. Chesson has done over the last year in managing this district in regards to the pandemic, in regards to the day-to-day grind, in regards to opening our school in a safe condition, in regards to making sure that we had three different actual teaching plans in regards to our kids coming in. The fact that our kids actually came in 4 days out of the week from middle school and elementary while every other district was closed. I could go on all day long, but I'm not going to eat up the public forum. I'm not done yet, sir. I'm not done yet.
Carry on.
So I think that we actually have seen all the information that was provided to us firsthand and evaluated appropriately. It's been voted on and that's final.
I think
So-
as it pertains to the survey, there's room for improvement, and exemplary doesn't allow for that. I'll move on.
You're entitled to your opinion and you should
On
wrap
May
it up
20th, I
quickly.
received a written reply from the school that future surveys will provide parents and guardians 14 days notice, a link to request a copy of the survey, and then the option to opt out of the survey. I would like to ask you again, Marlena, why is 30 days not possible? Why can't the survey be attached to the notice instead of an option to request it? Because that feels like a deliberate attempt to minimize transparency. And then why can't this be opt-in versus opt-out? That would solve all my concerns. Those are the
I'll answer you and then we're going to wrap this up here.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Wasn't this discussed with this gentleman?
It was, and it's a
Thank
public
you.
forum that will discuss district-wide concerns in regards to this. So the policy for our surveys is there is no opt-in. It's an opt-out. That is what the district policy is. That's what this board had agreed to, and that's what we support. We also support Dr. Chesson's choice in administering the survey and offering the opt-out. 14 days is an amicable amount of time for a parent to receive an email and make a decision. 2 days, I would agree with you 100% is not enough time. 2 weeks is absolutely. 30, you give me some notice in 30 days, I already forgot about it 2 weeks ago. I gotta get back to
The content
it.
needs to be visible from that notice then. You know, I'm not gonna let off that.
You're next.
I'm gonna close. Not knowing what lies ahead, it is clear that I no longer can assume the school is looking out for my best interest or my students' interest, my daughter's interest. I would like to go on the record today and opt out all 3 of my daughters from any and all future surveys. I would like to encourage other parents and guardians to be proactive and do the same if that is their wish. In closing, I will thank all the teachers, the school committee, and the faculty members for their hard work on the academic curriculums. I would like to ask you all to stay focused on that work and the importance of teaching kindness, good character, and independent thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Peggy Lynch, Main Street, Dunstable. I'm really nervous. So I have 3 boys that have gone through, 2 boys that have gone through the school system, a 27-year-old that is a nuclear engineer, a 25-year-old that is a first lieutenant in the Air Force, and an 8th grader going into 9th grade. I have never been to a board meeting, and I apologize for that, but I found that years of volunteer in the elementary and middle school is where I belong in volunteering on the ski trips every year. I mean, the ski program. When I became aware of this survey, it wasn't from my son. He would have been way too embarrassed to talk to me about it. It was a friend of mine that posted it on Facebook, and then I questioned my son. In 5th grade, my son believed in Santa Claus. Honest to God, he believed in Santa Claus. He was 11 years old. There's no way at 12 years old he was having oral sex. There's a pandemic. I can understand about the health and the mental status and maybe suicide a little bit, but my husband, Mike, and I were right on top of that. And my son did struggle. And we as a family worked him through that. I thought that questions were completely inappropriate for middle school children. High school is a different thing. I personally would recommend it goes through your pediatric office. When my kids went for their physical, the nurse practitioner, the doctor had asked me, I'd like to talk to your son alone when he was 14, 15 years old. One of my sons had a hickey on his neck. And I said, no problem, have at it. And I wanted that discussion. I believe that survey should be given in a pediatric office if the parent and the child is willing to take it. That's where it's going to be answered honestly. I know hundreds of kids in this town, and they did not answer that survey honestly. They thought it was a joke. They all said they had sex all the time. They did drugs all the time. It's not reliable. So I think it's a waste of time, truthfully. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. And I do love our teachers in our school system.
And then, you had your hand up? Okay, yeah.
So did you guys actually like read the survey? I just want to
Yes.
make that
Yes.
clear. You did read it?
Yes.
Okay, and you think the questions are appropriate?
Well, can I just clarify something?
Absolutely.
If you had answered to the first question that you had never had sex, the rest of the questions were not available to you. However, when parents asked for a text copy of the survey, that mechanism, which, as you can understand, would not be available because it only happens when the program is actually, you go into a program and says, if the person says yes, go this way, show this. If the person says no, show this. That mechanism did not work. So therefore, any student who responded that they had never had sex would not see the rest of the questions. That
Okay.
is what I saw the text, but we were told we don't take the survey, but I was told by Emerson Hospital that that's how it worked.
Okay, but as you just heard, a lot of the students.
No.
No,
Sorry.
I'll let you come up right after, but there was another woman that had a hand up first, so.
As you heard from the person before me, a lot of the students didn't actually take it seriously. So if they answered the questions in a certain order, then they're going to get the questions that you said that they wouldn't necessarily get if they were answering truthfully. And that exposes them to a lot of stuff that they might go on and look on the internet later and try to. I'm sorry. Sorry, let me start over. Okay. So if you think the questions are appropriate, do you mind if I ask you some questions? So I was just wondering. So during the past 30 days, on how many days did you look at pornographic material, either in electronic or any other format? Would you mind answering?
You're done.
Yes.
You wouldn't answer that?
No, you're done.
Come on up
Because you
next.
think the question's
We're gonna
inappropriate?
have a
Is that why?
we're gonna have a
These
respectful
are questions on the survey for
Sir,
11-year-olds.
We're going to have a respectful discussion. I understand that you do not approve the survey. I understand that in the future, your child will opt out of the survey.
I'd like to hear some of the questions.
I have
He can ask you
I have a few
outside.
questions right here, I'm sure.
I'm not here.
Sir, I'm going to ask you the last time
Okay.
to release the microphone to the next woman.
Because I'm reading your
Because-
questions.
Yes.
You're censoring me?
You're done.
Your questions that you're giving
You're
to
done, sir.
11-year-olds?
The questions
done.
were issued in a confidential manner, not in a public forum. If you want to see the questions, you can have a copy of them.
The questions are inappropriate no matter
Sir,
how you ask
one
them.
last
right?
time, please step away from the
Why
microphone
don't
and
we
let
take a
someone
vote to
else
see if we can
speak and
hear
ask
what
some
some of the
questions and
questions were?
comments.
The inclusion doesn't
Sir.
apply here, sir. Let someone else ask.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Axon. I do want to just take a moment to thank you for giving us this forum and for every parent and member of the community who has come up and spoken. I'm kind of with Peggy. It's actually more nerve-wracking than you may think. I'm one of the parents who fall into the category of not having attended school committee meetings, but I do see that being able to come to these school committee meetings in person is really important. I think people have, when left on their own, tend to maybe not assume the best of intentions from certain subjects. And I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there. So to be able to give this forum to people, to be able to stand up and to hear your side and to hear our side is really important. That last gentleman that was up here is my son. He went to this school. He graduated a couple of years ago. My two daughters are here. I understand that isn't. I understand where you're coming from, but I want you to know that as an 11-year-old, answering those questions, even if it's in anonymity, it's very uncomfortable for them. Dr. Chesson, I know what you said about my theory was are you sexually active? And if you said no to that, and then you weren't asked the 10 other very detailed questions about it, that would be the way to go. So if you wouldn't mind looking into that, because from our point of view, from what I've heard from just about everybody else, that's not what happened. I also understand the importance of collecting information for health reasons. Like Peggy said, we go to the pediatrician and that information is given, and you have a back and forth with an educated healthcare provider who's there to support you and to answer your questions, and that's very important. And I understand even if the school wanted to do it. I'm not against health surveys. None of us are against health surveys. And there's been information out there, well, if we're the group that's against health surveys, don't you think your kids are doing this anyways and you're just trying to push it under the rug? That's not true. I don't think 72 questions is necessary. If you're collecting data, okay, fine. Do you feel depressed? Do you have a trusted person to be able to go to? Are you sexually active? That's fine, but how many times do you have oral sex? I mean, what data point is that trying to collect? So what would you do with that data? It just doesn't even make any sense. And to go to Corey's point, it just can't be undone. So I know that maybe you're thinking we're making a big deal out of it, but once these kids, we want to keep the innocence of our children up until already where they think they're mature enough to have a responsible conversation with them. And we want to have a responsible conversation with them. But children develop at different rates and at different ages. And some 11 and 12-year-olds are very, very young. And it's different living in the country than it is maybe in the inner city. It doesn't mean that we don't want to have these conversations, but we don't want to have them with them at this age. And we do trust the school administration, and we do trust the school committee, and we just feel that we were really let down on this particular issue. And then we really felt that when we tried to bring it up that we were just silenced and shut down. And that caused a whole bunch of other problems that we probably really don't want to get into. But we just want, to have a voice. We want you to be able to listen to us. And I think maybe we just wanted you to hear, maybe you don't have to defend it. You didn't come up with it. But maybe if one of you could just say, you know what, I think I kind of agree with you. Maybe those questions were inappropriate for an 11-year-old. I mean, that would just go a long way. We don't have to always be entrenched in whatever side we're entrenched in. Sometimes we can just say, I made a mistake, or maybe you didn't make the mistake, because I honestly think most of you didn't come up with it and you didn't read it. But it's just a little bit of understanding and a little bit of, I can understand how you may not want your child to be exposed to those types of questions. We certainly, if you, I mean, can you imagine not knowing what oral sex is and going on the bus and Googling oral sex? I mean, can you just imagine what you're going to get? I mean, it's just not appropriate. And that's all I want to say.
I have 3 points to make. You said the policy is to opt out of the surveys. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I opted out. I was one of the lucky parents that saw the email in time, and I opted out because I did not know what was in that survey. I opted out, yet the survey was still sent to my daughter, and she could still open it and see what was the contents. Okay? Secondly, we've had 2 survey disasters in our district now. Okay? What prevents a teacher, as this has happened in other districts, from now sending out their own little surveys in class? Because I can tell you, it has already happened in my son's math class, where they were fishing to find out what our salary rate is, what our income is in our household, which I think is invasion of privacy. And then thirdly, I want to know, why is there not a form for us as parents that we can sign, like a consent form where you sign where you want your child's photo to be printed or their name used? I want to know, why is there not a consent form where we as parents can opt out of all surveys, sign it, and give it to the school, and that is the paper that tells you that we do not want surveys on our child. It is invasion of privacy. That is clearly what it is.
Sorry, I was just making a note.
Kind of front row.
I'm so sorry, sir. Come on up.
I'm Michael William on Chapman Street in Dunstable. I don't have to make this long because basically everything that Corey said is what I back up, but I think from a higher level, what I want to know and other people might want to know is how did the survey get here? There's no way any of you in your right mind could possibly think that was right, as many of other people said, so I don't have to get into it again, but I want to know from a higher level, where does it come from? How does it filter down from Emerson? I don't care what they want. I don't care how many years you've been doing it. Don't Rosa Parks sat in the back of a bus for how many years? Should it still be that way? So I don't care about the, oh, it happened this many years, and you can say you didn't have sex. The word sex shouldn't be anywhere in there from an 11-year-old, right? Not even the high school students should be getting it. They're minors. So the survey means nothing as far as I'm concerned. And like the kid said, everyone's screwing around with it anyway. So I just want to know from a higher level, where did it come down from and how did it get here? Why wasn't it just turned away? That's what I want to know.
John, explain why.
Sure. So Emerson Hospital works with a variety of school districts, which I've already talked about. They talk about the issues from the previous year's surveys. 2 years ago, so in 2019, there was a significant number of students who reported at the 8th grade level of being sexually active, and the concern was raised that the districts should know when that started, because we have to incorporate the appropriate things into our health program. And so the survey was, in 2020, we asked the same questions were asked as it was in 2021. Those were not the first time that those questions were asked. Parents, again, were given the option to opt out. We work with Emerson Hospital. They work with the CDC. So that's where that, if you want to know all the way where it comes from, the Emerson works with the state, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and they also work with the CDC to develop the surveys.
So why is it only certain towns? Why are we doing it?
No, every town does it, but only certain towns do it with Emerson Hospital. But every town I know of, this is my sixth district.
Told to do it.
That we're advised by that we should collect all kinds of social emotional data on our students. Yes, sir.
I mean,
Can it be denied?
If you're gonna, you got to come up to the microphone.
Corey Brock, Old Dunstable Road, Groton. Can that be refused by you?
Can I refuse to collect social
To
emotional
participate.
data? Yes, but we've also had
Can the parents have a vote on this?
Parents can opt out, sir.
opt out.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's
was obviously
what
not a good enough
the
control
answer is,
That's
sir.
mechanism.
how your vote is.
That was not a good enough control mechanism. It didn't work for me.
That's
It
your
didn't work
answer.
for this other woman that was just up here.
So
it's not a good control
So
mechanism.
if I may, and my board can step in if I am not speaking on behalf of the board. The survey in past experiences in this board, when we look at doing our job, which is policy, budget, hiring, superintendent, and business and finance director. Those are the primary purview of the school committee. When we look at our budget and we have to identify what our kids' needs, several years ago, when everyone, right after the debt crisis that everyone seems to remember, 2012, we had risk survey information that shared with us that we had a strong population of our middle school that have either thought about killing themselves or wanted to kill themselves, much like many other districts. But we did not have any support systems in staff because we went through severe cuts in our district, and from tier 2 services to guidance counselors to anything, excuse me? Nurses. We did not have the staff to the capacity that we should to service the amount of children in our district in the first place. Never mind the amount of students that were clearly struggling. And we're just talking about, that's just one element. That's not talking about the kids that actually may have taken drinks before or may have had different experiences. This did come up in the survey. I understand that there's a lot of people here that feel that the survey may have no relevance. My son took the survey as well. He's now in high school. I talked to him, I talked to his friends, and there are some kids that actually answer it honestly. I understand that there's some kids that don't, and I understand that there's a petition that had 62 signatures, but I also understand that the high school has 800 students in it. 800, not 62. And there's a lot of struggling students not only in our district, but in many other districts. And that survey helps us identify what is going on in our district to a certain level so we can actually implement the staff, the services, the resources to help our kids manage that, because you cannot be academically successful if you are not emotionally and socially supported. And that is the reason why this survey is being administered. It is the reason why you will have your opt-out, and it may not be acceptable to some. I thought it was a great idea to automatically opt out for every single survey known to man. Fabulous. Fantastic idea, in my opinion. And I will bring it up to the policy subcommittee, so maybe we can discuss it if the rest of the board wants to entertain it. But the reality is, there are some actual parents that would not opt out and didn't opt out, and I'm one of them. And it's only because of that that we were able to put in some supports for the kids that are struggling in our district. It may be all happy and fun at home in some of the households here, but I can tell you it's not across the board. And that's what we all need to understand. We have to support, and there's two hands here that were up versus you just standing up, so I am going to go to the...
Oh, I thought I was responding to the...
No, I was talking to the entire group here.
Greg Cates, Dunstable, Pond Street. Thank you. I think most reasonable people understand that getting engaged on mental health is important, especially with kids today, the 24/7 bullying, the social media, all this stuff. I think the problem is, number one, there's no mandate that we do the survey. So it just seems like the survey is just so important, this particular survey. Why, I have no idea. But if you need a survey to see what, the status of mental health is and where kids' heads at, why can't we do our own survey? I mean, I could create a survey in 10 minutes. I mean, maybe I'm a little more savvy than some people, but why do we have to bend over for Emerson Hospital? I mean, I just don't understand it just seems like...
We rely on the healthcare professionals to produce the surveys, not our parents.
Yeah, but we have healthcare professionals in schools.
And I know, and I'm being told. I understand your position. It's not the position of this board. I'm being honest. I'm not going to...
Yeah. I mean, I personally saw the questions. I thought they were inappropriate. My daughter's going to be in middle school next year. I certainly would opt out of every survey from now on. I just don't trust the school department anymore.
Yeah.
I don't trust the board here with this particular subject. It's just that simple. I mean, I do support, in general, we had a son go through the school. I have a lot of good things to say. I've had good contact with a lot of you people, and I do appreciate the work you do. But in this case, I just think you're wrong. I think the superintendent's wrong. I think the handling of this thing was done poorly.
So just on your question about why wouldn't we do our own? One of the, for me at least, one of the values of the Emerson Hospital survey is that we also get to kind of benchmark and see if Groton Dunstable is out of line with some of the other districts in the area.
I do understand that.
So,
I just think that some of these questions, and I think there's a lot of people, maybe everyone who disagrees with it is here tonight, maybe there's more that aren't here tonight, maybe less do. But there's just some of the stuff in there just completely inappropriate for today's age.
So just to that, the suggestion that's been made by Mr. Brock, not the specifics, but I think most of us, if not all of us, agree that more lead time should have been given. The ability for parents to review the survey is a good thing, so that people can make an informed judgment about whether their child participates or not, and the ability to opt out of the survey, which is already part of our policy. Those are all good things, and it's something that, as far as our policy, Dr. Chesson has already said, as far as practice, she's going to implement that as a practice. But I think for us, the school committee, we're responsible for setting the policy. We set the policy on the surveys or implementation of surveys in the district, and it's something that we need to review to see if we can bring the policy in line with what the practice is going to be going forward.
It does seem like there was some controls put in place already that did not work.
Well,
so,
one of the things the current policy says that a reasonable amount of time should be given that's subjective, you know, so having something that's more definite would be something that we would look at.
I would
in
just
terms of
support
number
it,
of
but
days.
it's just that we don't want any surveys.
I
would
think
support
that's something that also should be looked at.
Thank you.
I have a question. So from the survey and the results that's being collected, let's say 10 out of 15 kids are suicidal. How are we going to deal with this? Are we hiring professional? Because this is professional. This is doctors. So are we going to just hire 20 doctors now to deal with this child that's sexually molested at school, or at home, this child that's suicidal? This is stuff that teachers should be trained at. Teachers spend 70% of the day with our kids in class, okay? They see our kids. My kids come home, they grumble something, and then they go upstairs. I don't see them, okay? But I pay attention to my kids. Their personalities, I can see when they're down, okay? Teachers know students. They spend the whole year with that kid. Why isn't there some type of training where teachers can recognize when a child has a problem, and then the teachers can take it to the guidance counselor and say, something is up with Janelle today. Please contact the parents and ask them what's going on. Because we, as a community, we cannot afford all the doctors that we're going to need to solve all these problems.
So you want to answer the question?
Yeah, there is. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that this survey does tell us, is what kind of professional development we should be providing our teachers, so they can support your students. I think that's critically important. You hit it right, the nail right on the head.
Okay.
They also will, our suicide awareness program also tells them at what point, you know, this is something that you might help as a student, that a teacher that's close to the student. No, this is something you have to bring to the guidance counselor.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have, you know, levels of triage, and so we are hiring a clinical psychologist and a clinical social worker this year, because we have so many students, and by so many, we have a number of students that the needs have risen to that effect.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right, and that is one of the exact reasons why we do this survey.
Because, for instance, my daughter has ADD. She is on medication to control that. For instance, side effects are suicidal tendencies and all these things. So I read up on it and I educate myself on it. So next time I see my doctor, when her prescription has to be filled, I need to get feedback from the teachers, which I've been good. I email the teachers, tell them, hey, next week is an appointment. Is there any news? Okay,
Yes.
and they give me feedback, which is helpful because I take it back to the doctor. The doctor discusses it with her. But that's my privacy at home. That's the thing here. That's privacy at home. That's stuff that goes in on my house. Nobody else needs to know about these things. And that's the problem. We are now doing survey after survey trying to find out, and how are we going to know who these suicidal kids are? Based on a survey that's anonymous, how are you going to help these kids if you don't know who they are?
We don't, but we do know that that we need to have professional
Did
development.
you want to come up? You had your hand up, and then I think you did, right? Okay.
That's the point I wanted to make. I know these surveys for for mental health are important, but if you've taken the survey and you review it 6 months later, it's too late. I mean, it's too late. It's, you know.
What's the turnaround? That we actually got the data back this year much faster.
Okay, but I'm just saying that, what are you going to do with the information if you find out all the kids are having sex, so many kids are depressed? I rely, like you said, on my son's 8th grade teachers. They're amazing. Various reasons. He got a concussion once. They emailed me right away and said, something's up. I don't think he should I think he should come home. They're amazing. So I trust the teachers. I do. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you. This one right here, and then we'll go this way.
Kristen Barstow, Old Dunstable Road. I think I agree, and I do applaud like your efforts and what you're trying to accomplish. I truly do. When I got that email about, you know, a pupil risk survey, you know, about youth, I was all for it. I was like, absolutely. Okay, there's, you know, a committee that's engaged in my children that truly wants to know, wants to help and develop programs to help them. You know, and then my son came home after taking that survey and was clearly uncomfortable. Didn't know how to explain half the questions he asked. I think when I probed a little bit more into it, I think he was confused, and I don't think understood the meaning behind it, and I don't think he answered them honestly. And then I get an email from the guidance counselor that he's now having trouble in school. And now I'm worried that the survey has now justified what you're trying to accomplish, this diversity, equity, and inclusion. You now have created a problem, I think particularly with my son. I don't think that this was something beforehand. I think now he was asked to ask questions that he didn't truly understand, and it's now creating turmoil within him. And so to other points here is, now I think we do have some issues to overcome, and now we have to battle back because we can't take it away. And now it's working with guidance counselors, now it's working with more clinicians, now it's getting a little bit more involved with issues that I don't think were present before, and in knowing my son. So I'm for it if you guys are creating programs that are going to help with this, but all I'm asking is just not do anything that creates the problem to begin with.
And then I think we're going this way. James and Gracia.
David Town, Lake Circle, Dunstable. Great kudos to all the teachers, but I found even for my kids going through schools that there's a line that the parents have responsibility and the teachers have responsibility. Quite often the parents feel that the teachers, some teachers feel that they're almost co-parenting. You're not. There are issues that need to be addressed that are very, very important, which you should be addressing. But there are some issues that the parents need to address and not the teachers. In terms of values, morals, ethics, political ideas, it's not your job. That's what the parents' jobs is. And we get offended sometimes when we think you cross the line and you think that you're going to start stealing the values, the morals, the ethics, and the political ideology of people. So please, concentrate on being great teachers. And if there's issues that the parents should be involved in, that's their job. It's not your job. Number two, I'm a doctor. Lack of getting refusal doesn't mean I have consent. How somebody came up with the idea that if you don't opt up, you're opting in, that's like saying, well, you didn't say no when I wanted to have sex, so I assumed it's yes. Consent is consent. Lack of consent doesn't mean you didn't say no. So I don't understand that whole philosophy. Number three, the other gentleman who asked questions about the questions, there's a lot of distrust that the people have in government in general. I'm not addressing it to you. But over the past many years, there's a lot of anxiety and lack of trust and lies and deceptions that people feel that the government and bureaucracies have been given to the people. Openness, sunshine, is the most important thing. Putting out the questions, putting it out ahead of time, hiding nothing. Letting it be open to the public. If you guys want to be validated, respected, and admired, don't say you have to chase it. Put it out front so they can see it ahead of time. The other kid was asking some questions. I happen to be interested in what some of the questions were. And your blatant disregard to even allow him to ask the question that was on the survey that you guys put out to the kids that we couldn't hear was disrespectful to him and disrespectful to us and shows you're hiding stuff. And that's not how you build up trust with the community. Thank you.
I just have a simple question, really. It's obvious that folks are very concerned, especially with the middle school children here. But I guess, is there any reason why there weren't multiple surveys? That one may have been more appropriate, or at least more appropriate for the parents, for middle schoolers, and one for high schoolers.
Again, we work with the medical professionals at Emerson Hospital. I really feel like it would be inappropriate for me to tell Emerson Hospital what is the appropriate question for a 6th grader and 8th grader, because they have a great deal of history. They work with the CDC, they worked with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and we work with them. We have certainly can bring that feedback back to them, as every piece of feedback that we've gotten, the concerns, again, I need to say that we had, yes, we did have a number of concerns, but we also had close to 1,000 students who took the survey, and we don't have 1,000 people here tonight. So but all the feedback, every single piece of feedback that we've gotten, we have spoken to the people at Emerson Hospital and we have shared that feedback with them because we think it's important that they hear that.
Guy in the gray shirt in the back.
I'm sorry?
The guy in the gray shirt in the back.
In the gray shirt in the back?
There's a lady.
Oh, come on up.
Hi, my name's Abby Axon. I graduated on Friday and I had an incredible experience coming to the school. Great teachers, staff, faculty, and what I loved most about the teachers was that I was closest with is that they listened to their students. They heard us when we said we were stressed. They heard us when we said we needed more time or we needed a break, and they worked with us. I personally think that if a school committee is going to be loved and appreciated in the same way that I love and appreciate the teachers that I had, it is important to listen to all of the parents and their concerns. You said that the committee decided that parents cannot opt in on any surveys, so they must opt out if they don't want their kids participating in it. If you made that decision, why can't you change it?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Wait a second,
I won't answer it.
Well, I'm
There's
trying
two
to get
people over there.
multiple people.
Yeah.
Brian. Oh,
Yeah.
was someone?
She had a question.
What was your question?
The question was, why can't you, if the board
Haven't we
agrees
discussed
to
that
it,
already?
you can only opt out, why can't you change it that you have to opt in?
We've already discussed that tonight.
Yeah, because they want the results their way.
Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Giovanni, Robin Hill Road. I am a pediatrician. I am glad that some of you do talk to pediatricians about some of this stuff because it is important. It is our business. I suppose my reason for being up here is to editorialize a little bit. I don't dispute that there are parent concerns regarding lack of notice and the fact that there's a parent right to opt out. I understand that concern. This is stuff we deal with in the office all the time. We do have these private conversations with people all the time. There is a massive mental health crisis right now. I think the school is only part of that problem, or part of the solution. I think that the survey helps to inform, as the school committee has said, helps to inform what's happening in our district. If we don't survey enough kids, we're not going to know what's going on. We're not going to know what our kids are doing. And we can't solve a problem that we're not analyzing. But I do understand that there are parents who are not comfortable with these questions. I do get that. And I respect the fact that you prefer to talk to somebody like me rather than have your kids answer the questions. And I also think that's appropriate. But in doing this for the last 20 years, I can say for sure that I am both surprised and not surprised most days to get answers to questions that I ask by kids far younger than you would think on any of the topics that are on that survey. I get questions about pornography and sex and drugs. And I wish that more parents would talk to their kids about this stuff. If we're not talking about this stuff, it's not going to get solved. And if you think your kids aren't doing it, you're wrong. I don't know if it's yours, your child, but they're doing it. I promise you. And I am in the position of catching it when it all goes to you know where. And so this discussion, I think, is great. I think I've often said if there aren't people on opposite sides of issues discussing things, we're never going to solve anything. The fact that we're talking about this, hopefully there'll be more awareness about this. Hopefully more of you will talk to your kids, and there will be more awareness overall for people to talk to their kids, because if you get to me because you're in crisis, it's already on the late side. And especially right now, for those of you who have either behavioral health things yourselves or who have things with your kids, if you have a crisis right now, good luck finding a therapist, because it's not going to happen anytime soon. It might be 2 months, and then what do? So if the point is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, then the prevention is talking to your kids about this stuff. And if the survey has caused us to talk about this, and if enough people have answered the questions about their kids, that helps to inform our district and the community at large about what the issues are so funding can be gathered so that we can develop interventions, then I guess we did our job. But the specific questions that people have had and the concerns, we understand, I think there's an understanding about that, and hopefully the school committee has heard some of that. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Just one question. Is there any one entity or individual that has access to this data that they could be using it for personal gain or profit? Is this data shared with any one person or entity where they could use this for their own personal gain?
Emerson Hospital? I mean,
They're a not-for-profit.
No, oh, they're not for, yeah.
No, not-for-profit.
No.
Sir, come on up. Is there someone else holding it?
That
I'm
lady's
so
been
sorry.
having a hand.
And then right after? In fact, you're gonna close this up.
Hi, my name is Katie Kimball. My daughter's in 8th grade. She got one sex question. She didn't get anything else. So I have to assume the majority of people whose kids saw these other questions either lied or potentially the kids never did. But somebody on Facebook said, look at all these crazy questions. Your kids didn't see this. The majority of these kids didn't see it. They didn't know what they were supposed to do and they answered things truthfully. Number two, if you think your 6th grader doesn't know what sex is, you're out of your mind. Because they're talking about it on bus. They see it on the internet, but your kids have phones. These kids aren't in the dark. They know this stuff exists. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
You
Still
want-
Gene Gutherson. And really, I think just an observation here from my perspective. One, I don't think we see decision-making about this children in the district to Emerson. It's our responsibility through our elected officials, through the people that we hire in the district. So I don't really accept that answer, but that's okay. I understand. I also really applaud the good doctor that stood up here and talked about the data. And I think, you know, I'm a follow the data kind of person, right? Anecdotal evidence is fun. It's always good to talk about. Facebook is full of anecdotes, right? Data is really important to make good decisions. And my concern is that the perceived lack of transparency, and I use perceived importantly, right? The perceived lack of transparency and a perceived unwillingness to admit that you could have done this better, although I think you've done some of that, you run the risk of losing a lot of people that no longer trust any survey whatsoever. That survey that's going to give you the data that you need to make good decisions. So I implore you to think about the conversations that we've had this evening, find a way to find the middle ground, give some trust back to our parents, so that we can let our kids take the surveys and give you the data so that you can help us help our kids and all.
Perfect ending.
We got 4 minutes. Come on up. You are the new closer.
Unless you only go 2 minutes.
Unless you only go 2 minutes.
Okay. I just want to make a point, which is that when my daughter was in 8th grade, there was a rash of girls that would go to the girls' room and cut. Well, no, Jesus had nothing to do with it. Okay, so they were in there cutting, and you know how they found out about it? Through the survey. Now, I'm not advocating that this was handled well. In fact, I don't think it was. Sorry, I think all of you do a great job, but I really think this was, well, I won't use the language I'd like to use, a real mess up, okay? However, you've got to look at the value of it too. And those girls got into therapy. Their parents had to come in. No one, I mean, this was not exposed because they didn't have their names on there, but you start to see the girls who had their sleeves pulled down over their hands, right? And you start to see, as a teacher, they were saying, you know, there's a large number here. You would begin to see those scratches coming up, okay? So then you go to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor would get in touch with the parents, and then the parents were coming in. It was known, well known, my sister's a therapist in Lexington. It was well known Groton Dunstable had a cutting issue, okay? Let's look at the value of it too. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and if you want to opt out, opt out. You know, that's fine. Teach your kids at home, that's fine. Or teach it at the, but don't see it, don't devalue it to the point where it has nothing, no value.
And Brian, he may be a pediatrician, but man, he's got the cutest smile.
You got it.
I'm sorry I missed the most exciting part of the evening, but it's because I was outside getting to know one of my neighbors, and I realized that I owe some committee members an apology for looping in things that I saw on Facebook to attribute some of that language here. In reality, I'm so grateful this was an open forum, so grateful for all the parents that came out, so grateful that you sat there patiently and listened to a lot of folks. I hope we have more and more of these, and I hope more and more people, next time we have it, we have twice the attendance. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, I apologize for any misattribution, that's the word, for attributing stuff that may not be applicable here. And I will say that, echo one more thing about the survey itself, it's not that people don't want there to be health questions. I think it's mostly about the rollout and parents' rights. And I'm pretty sure that if all parents, doctor, didn't want to do it, it's still the parents' right to opt out of that. But I'm also 100% convinced that if people opt out or opt in, you're still going to get a very good survey sample size. So again, thank you. I hope we do this more, do it often, and thanks to the parents who came out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, wrapping it up, we have to enter into an executive session. I hope you're all. I would entertain a vote to enter into executive session for the purpose to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares in accordance to MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A for Unit A, C, D, and not to return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, with a roll call vote. Faye?
Yes.
Ralphie?
Yes.
Lacey?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Marlena, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
So done.